The armor had sat untouched for over 1,000 cycles, a relic of war buried in the vaults of the Varnak Confederation, rumored to have been forged by a long-dead civilization with knowledge lost to time. Countless alien species, warlords, champions, scientists, and fools had tried to bond with it. None had lasted more than a few seconds before the armor rejected them. Bones snapped, flesh boiled, and screams echoed through the chambers like curses. They called it the Void Skin. Sentient, they said. Aware and angry, its creators were wiped out, possibly by the armor itself. And now it waited, always waiting. That was until the humans came. Humans were late to the galactic stage, primitive, chaotic, and emotionally unstable. But their rise was fast. Too fast. They had a strange knack for breaking what others built and surviving what should have killed them, and that made them dangerous. Or maybe just different. Captain Reyna Morrow didn't look like a galactic savior. She wasn't bred for war or enhanced with cybernetic strength. Just a former scavenger from the outer colonies, now serving under a provisional peacekeeping unit attached to the Varnak borderlands. She had scars, deep ones, emotional and physical, but none of that mattered to the armor. Not yet. Her squad had stumbled across the hidden vault while chasing pirate signals in the Derex system. The energy readings were off the charts, and before anyone could stop her, Reyna stepped inside. "What is this place?" she'd whispered. "Classified," the Varnak tech said, jittering nervously. His skin shimmered in fear, an involuntary reflex. "You're not allowed to be here." She ignored him. The armor stood upright in the center of the room, mounted like a statue but thrumming like a beast. Black metal, carved with crimson veins pulsing softly, as if breathing. The moment Reyna saw it, she felt something twist in her chest. Not fear, not awe, recognition. Her hand moved without thinking, brushing against the plating. The tech screamed, "No!" But it was too late. A shockwave slammed through the room, hurling everyone back. Lights burst, alarms blared, and the ground cracked beneath her boots. Reyna didn't fall. The armor moved, its plating unfolded piece by piece, floating mid-air, and then it slid around her body like liquid steel. No screams, no melting, no rejection. It accepted her. The room fell silent, stunned. Then, as if awakened by her presence, the armor's core flared. A red blaze surged from the chest, pulsing like a heartbeat. Symbols once dead came to life. And somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, deep in forgotten space, machines stirred. Old ones, deadly ones, ones waiting for a signal. Reyna collapsed to her knees as the armor fused completely. "Captain, are you okay?" A voice crackled in her ear. Her own voice replied, but it wasn't fully hers anymore. "Something's coming, something old, and it knows I'm here." She felt it. War had been asleep. And now it was wide awake. Reyna sat in the center of the ruined vault, the armor clinging to her like a second skin. It didn't feel like metal anymore. It felt alive, warm, almost like blood pulsed beneath it. She could hear it, not with her ears but somewhere deeper, like a whisper brushing against the back of her skull. A voice without language, a presence without shape. Her team stared at her like she was some kind of monster or a miracle. The Varnak tech, Thurn, backed away until he hit the wall. "It chose you," he muttered, trembling. "It chose you. That's not possible." Reyna turned toward him slowly, her every movement now perfectly balanced, too smooth to be natural. "You said no one could wear it." "They can't. Hundreds have tried. They died, screaming. That thing kills everything it touches." He looked like he might be sick. You're not supposed to be alive." "Well," she said flatly, "I guess no one told the armor that." The rest of her squad remained frozen in the corridor, weapons lowered but eyes wide. Even the hard-nosed Sergeant Kell, who had seen a decade of war on the Outer Rims, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Cap?" he said cautiously. "You all right in there?" "I think so," Reyna answered. But she wasn't sure. Something inside her felt different, stronger, like every cell in her body was humming. The armor didn't just protect her, it was bonding with her, syncing, learning. Her HUD lit up with foreign symbols, scrolling too fast for her to process. Yet somehow she understood what they meant. It was ancient tech, way beyond anything in the galactic archives. Then she felt it, deep in her chest, like a warning bell. Her head snapped upward. "They're coming," she said. "Who?" Kell asked, but Reyna was already on her feet. "Something was sleeping out there, waiting for this armor to wake up, and now it knows I'm here." Back on their cruiser, alarms screamed. Thurn scrambled for a terminal. "I'm picking up multiple warp signatures. Fast, heavy, old tech. Not Varnak. Not anything modern." He looked up, pale. "They're not just coming. They've already arrived." Reyna walked past him, her boots thudding softly, the armor adjusting around her. Doors slid open before she even reached them. The ship recognized her now. Everything was sinking. "Get me visuals," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing a stretch of black space now glittering with red. Ships, dozens of them. Dark, jagged, ancient war machines that didn't belong to any known race. They were shaped like insects, spiked and crawling, as if they were grown, not built. And at the center of the fleet was something enormous. A carrier, or maybe a hive. Its hull was cracked and pulsing, its engines leaking a sickly green glow like a rotting wound. It moved slowly, but with terrifying purpose. "Who the hell are they?" Kell muttered. Thurn's voice cracked. "I've seen those designs in Forbidden Records. They're from before the collapse. That's pre-divide tech. That's impossible." Reyna stared at the screen, her heart pounding, not in fear, but with a strange certainty. "They're not here for the Varnak," she said. "They're not even here for the galaxy." Her eyes narrowed. "They came for me." Suddenly, the HUD in her helmet flared. A message appeared in alien text, but she didn't need a translation. "Welcome back, Wielder. War resumes." The cruiser shook violently as the first wave of energy struck its outer shields. Alarms flared. Red lights bathed the control room in panic. Outside, the alien fleet began surrounding them like wolves closing in on a wounded animal. Reyna didn't flinch. She could feel the hum of the armor syncing with the ship's systems. Without touching a single control, she accessed the cruiser's defense grid. Data surged through her thoughts like wildfire. Weapon schematics, shield positions, power reserves. It was overwhelming, but somehow manageable. The armor filtered it, organized it, taught her. "Defensive positions!" she shouted. "Divert full power to the forward shields. Brace for impact." Her crew stared at her. Thurn blinked. "How the hell do you know our shield modulation protocols?" "I didn't," she said, eyes fixed on the screen. "The armor does." Another blast slammed into them. The ship groaned, but held. Barely. Reyna turned toward Kell. "We can't win this in orbit. We need to land on the surface. Draw them away from the civilians." "Land. With that fleet out there?" he barked. "They don't want the ship. They want me," she said flatly. "So I give them what they want. And when they come for me, I make them regret it." The room went quiet. Nobody argued. 30 minutes later, the ship broke atmosphere, tearing through the clouds of a nearby uninhabited moon. It was all mountains and ash. No cities, no colonies, no witnesses. Perfect for a fight no one wanted recorded. Reyna stepped out of the drop hatch as soon as the cruiser touched down. The armor shifted around her, reinforcing her limbs, wrapping her back with what looked like wing-like extensions. Blades, maybe. The moment her boots hit the ground, the air around her rippled. The temperature dropped. Energy licked off her like static on a live wire. She wasn't just wearing the armor anymore. She was the armor. The alien ships followed fast. They didn't land like normal vessels. They burrowed into the ground, digging, crawling, cracking the crust beneath them. And from their open maws, they released creatures unlike anything anyone had seen. Not biological, not fully mechanical either. Hybrids, twisted ancient war beasts. They moved like predators, hunched low, with limbs that bent wrong and eyes that glowed like coals. Some had multiple heads, others hovered without wings. All of them locked onto Reyna the moment they arrived. And they didn't roar. They hissed, low, unified, as if speaking in a tongue meant for nightmares. Kel's voice buzzed in her earpiece. "You're not fighting that army alone?" Reyna didn't respond right away. She stepped forward, her armored boots melting the ground beneath her. The wind picked up, whipping ash into the air like snow. "You're right," she said. Then she raised her arm. The armor lit up with burning red lines across her limbs and chest. The ground cracked beneath her. Her voice changed again, layered, distorted, old. "I'm not alone," she said. All around her, strange, dark shapes rose from the stone. Figures, ancient constructs buried beneath the surface, forgotten war machines, tall, skeletal things with blade arms and shielded backs. Not alive, not dead. The armor had awakened them. Her army had been buried with the armor all along, and now they stood behind her. One of the creatures hissed and charged. Reyna didn't move. She waited until it was 2 feet from her. Then she raised her hand and snapped her fingers. The construct to her right lunged forward, driving its blade straight through the beast's chest. Reyna stared at the others. "Come then," she whispered. "Let's finish what your master started." The war hadn't just awakened. It remembered. The sky turned black as the alien fleet fully descended, blotting out the stars above the ash-covered moon. Ships hung like vultures, motionless for now, but ominous. They were waiting, observing, measuring her. Reyna stood at the center of a slowly growing army, ancient constructs, nearly 24 of them, each over 7 feet tall, carved from some kind of dark alloy that shimmered like obsidian under lightning. Their forms weren't perfect. Some looked half-shattered, limping or missing limbs, but they responded to her presence like loyal war dogs. One moved beside her and let out a grinding hum, as if eager to be unleashed. Behind her, Kel and the rest of the squad held the outer perimeter of the drop zone, wide-eyed and silent. No one dared ask where these things came from. No one dared get close, either. "Status on the creatures?" Reyna asked, voice calm despite the chaos. Kel's voice crackled back. "They've stopped advancing, holding formation at about 400 meters. Still surrounding us, but not attacking. It's like they're waiting for something." "They are," Reyna said, eyes locked on the sea of hybrid beasts across the broken plain. "They're waiting for their master." And just as she said it, he came. The ground trembled, the air pulsed, and then from the largest alien ship a figure descended. He didn't ride a craft. He was the craft, towering, armored in black and crimson like a living monument of death. The being floated down in absolute silence. His body shifted constantly, like molten armor refusing to settle. He landed with a thunderous crack that shattered a ring of stone around him. Then, for the first time, the two sides were face to face. The wielder and the warbringer. Reyna didn't flinch. The figure stood taller than her by at least 3 feet, with a jagged crown fused into its helmet and 6 glowing eyes that burned like dying stars. When he spoke, it wasn't in sound. It was in pressure, in pulses, in thoughts slammed directly into her skull. "Wielder, you were not meant to rise." She stepped forward, her own armor reacting, surging red light through her veins. "And yet, here I am." "You wear our legacy like a thief." "No," Reyna said. "I was chosen, and I think that pisses you off." The Warbringer tilted his head. "You were chosen by a mistake. That armor was never meant for your kind. You bleed, you rot, you die so easily." "I also fight," she said, stepping forward again. Her constructs moved with her, forming ranks on either side. "And unlike you, I don't need 1,000 years of slumber to remember how." The Warbringer raised one hand. A low vibration passed through the entire moon. Across the battlefield, every hybrid beast began to shift. Then they charged. Hundreds of them. Reyna didn't hesitate. "Form ranks!" she roared, her voice echoing not just in the air, but in the minds of her army. The constructs responded instantly, slamming into position in front of her, shield arms locking together like an ancient phalanx. Her squad fell behind, forming their own defense perimeter. The first wave of beasts crashed into the construct line, and chaos erupted. Steel clashed with bone, blades pierced chests, sparks and black blood filled the air. Reyna was already in motion, her armor propelling her forward like a missile. She collided with a hulking hybrid, splitting it in half with a single sweep of her arm. The armor formed a blade as needed, morphed into claws, became a cannon, always adapting, always perfect. She was fury incarnate, but even as she cut through the wave, she felt the Warbringer watching, unmoving, calculating. She knew this wasn't the real battle. This was a test. He was measuring her. What he didn't know, what he couldn't feel, was the storm building inside her. Because the armor wasn't just connecting her to an army, it was connecting her to a memory, and that memory was waking up. The battlefield burned beneath a blood-red sky, scorched by plasma fire and the violent dance of ancient weapons. Reyna moved like a ghost through the chaos, her body no longer her own, but an extension of the armor's will. Every strike she landed was flawless. Every dodge was pre-calculated. She wasn't thinking anymore. She was remembering. Flashes of something unfamiliar, yet deeply embedded, slammed into her mind between kills. A tower of black stone. A voice calling out her name, but not the name Reyna. A war not of her time. The armor wasn't just protecting her. It was feeding her a past. Its past. A hybrid beast lunged from her blind spot, screeching with a mouth full of blades. The armor reacted before she could. A spike jutted from her elbow, and with a twist of her torso, it tore through the creature's throat. It fell, writhing, choking on its own corrupted blood. Then the memory came again, clearer. A battlefield of broken stars, ships burning in orbit, millions screaming through silent space. She stood at the center of it all, but it wasn't her body. It was someone else's. Same armor, different soul. She gritted her teeth, trying to push the image away. "Not now," she hissed, but the armor didn't stop. The Warbringer raised his hand once more, and from the skies, beams of green fire rained down. They weren't aimed at Reyna. They were aimed at her constructs. Entire columns were vaporized, limbs scattered across the field. Ash replaced steel. The line was cracking. Kel's voice buzzed in her ear. "We can't hold this much longer. Cap, we're getting shredded." Reyna glanced toward her squad. They were pinned behind a broken ridge, laying down fire, but surrounded. Her soldiers were human, fragile, mortal. She could feel their fear. Then the memory struck again. Violent and full. A different war. Another wielder. A woman, eyes blazing with light, standing before a crowd of dying worlds. "You were made to carry the war," the voice whispered in her skull. You are not the first. You are the last. Reyna stumbled as the vision faded. Her breath came hard, steam escaping the vents in her armor. She dropped to one knee as pain surged through her spine. But she understood now. The armor didn't just need a host, it needed a match. Someone who had nothing left to lose. Someone desperate enough to give themselves to it fully. She hadn't just been chosen. She had qualified. Reyna rose, the armor locking tight around her ribs. A strange new strength flowed into her legs, her arms. The heat of war surged through her blood, no longer terrifying, almost welcome. She turned her gaze to the Warbringer. "You're afraid of me," she said aloud, voice crackling through the air. The Warbringer's head tilted. "We are not afraid. We are inevitable." "Bullshit," she growled. "If you were so inevitable, you wouldn't have waited 1,000 years for someone dumb enough to touch this armor. You were hoping it would never wake up again." She raised her arms, and the ground trembled beneath her. The constructs that had fallen began to stir. Limbs regrew. Armor reformed. The armor wasn't just controlling them. It was rebuilding them, rewriting broken code in real time. Where one had fallen, two now rose. And then Reyna did something unexpected. She called out to her squad. "All of you, stand up now!" Kel's voice came back. "We're pinned. We don't have—" "Stand the fuck up!" Silence. Then slowly, one by one, her team rose from behind cover, battered and bleeding. She extended her hand. A wave of red energy pulsed from her core, washing over them. The armor didn't stop with her constructs. Her squad's suits began to shimmer, enhance, adapt. Not full armor, no, but enough. Enough to fight. Enough to survive. "Holy shit," someone whispered. "She's spreading it." Reyna's eyes locked on the Warbringer once more. "I'm not your past," she said. "I'm your reckoning." Then she charged. This time, the Warbringer moved to meet her. 2 titans, 2 legacies, and between them, the fate of 1,000 silent wars. They collided like meteors. The moment Reyna's armored fist met the Warbringer's blade arm, the shockwave split the ground between them. Stone shattered, air cracked, and soldiers on both sides were thrown backward like paper caught in a hurricane. The sky itself seemed to recoil. Reyna spun with the force, using the armor's momentum to dodge the Warbringer's second strike. A sweeping blow meant to slice her in half. His blade hit the ground where she'd stood and sent molten rock spraying into the air. She came up behind him, slammed both fists into his back, and drove him forward several feet. He didn't fall, but he stumbled. He hadn't expected her to hit that hard. Good. The Warbringer turned, eyes burning brighter. He extended his arm, and the blade morphed, stretching into a jagged whip of black energy. It lashed toward her. She ducked, but it grazed her shoulder, carving through the armor with a screech that echoed through her bones. The pain was real, raw and hot, but the armor sealed the wound almost instantly. "You're slow," Reyna said through clenched teeth. "You've been asleep too long. And you are new, arrogant," he lunged. They traded blows with the fury of titans. Every strike from the Warbringer was meant to kill. Every counter from Reyna was precise, strategic. She wasn't trying to overpower him. She was learning. Each movement, each adjustment in his weapon was fed into her armor's systems and adapted against. What he didn't realize was that while he was fighting with old strength, she was fighting with evolving strength. Still, he was relentless. He drove her back with a flurry of rapid blows, forcing her to leap into the air. Her armor responded instantly, sprouting jet boosters from her back and heels. She launched upward, flipping in midair, and came crashing down with a seismic punch that cratered the entire battlefield. The Warbringer roared in frustration, staggered again, but he wasn't finished. He raised both arms, and the air shimmered with heat. A ripple spread across the field, and suddenly everything stopped. Time didn't freeze, but it slowed, just enough for Reyna to feel it. Do you know why your kind was never meant to wield the void skin? The Warbringer's voice filled her head. She didn't answer. Because humans feel too much. You drown in your own noise, rage, grief, guilt. You are chaos pretending to be order. The air pulsed. Reyna felt the memories creeping in again, sharper this time, like broken glass under her skin. A child's scream. Her mother, face burned, reaching out through smoke. The smell of burning colony metal and the roar of pirate engines leaving her behind. Number not now. She clenched her fists. The armor around her flared, veins of red light pulsing harder. You use pain like a weapon, the Warbringer hissed, but it will consume you. You think I use it? Reyna spat. Pain built me. She charged again, breaking through the time-slow field with a burst of will and fury. The armor responded with a shriek of metal. This time, she didn't aim for the Warbringer's weapon. She aimed for his core. She drove a punch straight into his chest. The armor howled as her fist cracked through his plating. The Warbringer let out a distorted bellow, part scream, part mechanical glitch, and reeled backward, smoke pouring from the dent in his body. She pressed the attack, slashing, striking, relentless. With each hit, the armor fed her more energy, more clarity, more memory, not just hers, all the previous wielders, their final moments, their victories, their regrets. And one truth burned through it all. This war had happened before. And the last time, it hadn't ended. It had been sealed. That's why the armor waited. That's why it refused others. It wasn't just looking for strength. It was looking for vengeance. Reyna ducked another attack and drove her knee into the Warbringer's head, knocking him off balance. Then she jumped, straight into the sky. Her armor surged with stored energy, a glow blinding and angry. She raised her arms above her head. Below her, the Warbringer looked up, his 6 eyes narrowing. Too late. She came down like judgment, and the battlefield erupted. The blast tore a canyon into the moon's crust. Flames erupted in all directions as Reyna's impact cratered the ground beneath the Warbringer. A shockwave rolled across the battlefield, flinging both friend and foe like rag dolls. Dust clouds swallowed everything, and for a moment, the world went silent. Reyna rose slowly from the center of the impact zone, the armor hissing and steaming across her body. The chest piece pulsed violently, overcharged and burning red. Her breath was ragged, the kind that came from pushing both body and mind past their limit. Her knuckles throbbed beneath the armor, and her muscles trembled. That last strike had nearly torn her apart. But he was down. The Warbringer lay in the shattered rock, embedded halfway into the earth. His armor cracked, faceplate dented, one of his arms sparking and twitching without purpose. For the first time, he looked less like a god and more like a broken machine. She walked toward him, every step heavy with dust and fury. Her constructs flanked her, battered but still standing. Behind them, her squad, Kel and the others, emerged from cover, staring in awe. They had seen what she did. They had felt it. Kel's voice finally crackled over comms. Is it over? Reyna didn't answer right away. Her eyes never left the Warbringer's body. Something felt off. Wrong. Too quiet. Too still. And then the ground shifted beneath her feet. Not cracked. Breathed. A low groan echoed up from the planet's crust. A vibration that shook the air, the sky, her bones. The Warbringer's damaged body twitched again. But this time, he wasn't moving on his own. He was being dragged, pulled downward by something below. What the hell? Reyna muttered, backing away. Then the Warbringer's chest split open, not from damage, but willingly, as if surrendering something buried deep inside. From the cavity, a black mist poured upward. It didn't behave like gas. It coiled, thick and intelligent. It reached toward the sky like fingers, then sank into the moon's crust. And the voice returned. But it wasn't the Warbringer. It was older. "You opened the gate, little wielder." Reyna froze. He was never the threat. He was the lock. The ground beneath her exploded. A black spire, wider than a cruiser and tall as a mountain, erupted from the surface, spewing chunks of rock into orbit. It wasn't metal. It wasn't stone. It was something alive. The tip twisted as it grew, splitting open into tendrils that screamed into the sky. The Warbringer's broken body was yanked into it and absorbed like fuel. All across the battlefield, the hybrid beasts stopped moving. Every single one of them dropped where they stood, lifeless. They were never meant to win. They were just the distraction. Reyna stared in horror as more spires began to rise in the distance. 5, 10, more every second. And from the holes they left behind, something massive stirred, something buried long ago by beings who understood fear better than any living race ever could. Thurn's voice broke through on the channel, panicked and hoarse. "This isn't an invasion, it's a resurrection. The armor, it wasn't built for war. It was built to stop it." Reyna's breath caught in her throat. It all made sense now. The armor didn't choose warriors because it wanted to conquer. It chose survivors, people broken by pain, hardened by loss, the kind of soul who would never let it fall into the wrong hands. Because it wasn't a weapon. It was a seal, and she had just broken it. The sky above the moon shimmered and tore open. A rift, gigantic, howling with static and light. Through it came something immense. She couldn't comprehend its shape. It shifted constantly, eyes without bodies, limbs without logic. It wasn't a creature. It was a force. And it was free. Her legs nearly gave out. She had won the fight, but she had lost the war. Kel's voice whispered through the silence. "Reyna, what do we do now?" She looked up, jaw clenched, heart breaking. "We finish it," she said, "even if it killed her, especially if it did. The world was ending, and Reyna was the one who had lit the match. The spires howled like dying gods as they reached toward the stars, splitting the moon apart at its core. Cracks spread in all directions, magma boiling from deep within, spilling like blood across the ash-covered battlefield. Above, the rift in the sky widened, reality bending at its edges. The creature on the other side loomed without form, its mass unfathomable, as if it were pressing against existence itself, waiting to step through. And it was her fault. She could feel the armor trembling now, not from fear, but rage. It was screaming, not in her ears, but in her very soul. It knew what was coming. It had fought this thing before, long ago, and it had lost. That was why it sealed itself, why it rejected every unworthy host until her. "I should have known," Reyna whispered, her voice raw. "You weren't a weapon. You were a warning." But there was no time for guilt, no room for regret, not anymore. The ground beneath her cracked violently. One of the spires erupted beside her, nearly toppling her as flaming debris tore into the sky. She caught herself, boots digging into molten rock, armor hissing as it cooled her flesh. Behind her, the constructs had fallen again. This time for good. Whatever energy sustained them was gone. Drained. Spent. Her squad stood at the edge of the crater, watching in stunned silence. They were soldiers. Brave. But this wasn't a battle anyone had prepared for. Reyna turned to Kel. "Get the others back to the cruiser, now." "We're not leaving you," he said, shaking his head. "You can't stop that thing alone." "I'm not stopping it," she said softly. I'm sealing it, just like the last wielder did. His eyes widened. But they died. I know. She turned back toward the sky. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm just asking you to go. Kel hesitated. Then he nodded. You better make this count. She smiled, a bitter, cracked thing. I always do. As her squad fell back, Reyna stepped forward, toward the rift, toward the thing that should not be. The closer she got, the more her vision blurred, as if reality itself was being rewritten. And then, the armor spoke, not in words, in memory. She saw them, all of them. The previous wielders, dozens, hundreds, men, women, beings without names or forms, across centuries, across galaxies. All of them had fought, all had failed, except one, the last one, the one who gave the armor its final command. Wait, watch, choose the one who won't give up. And it had waited. All this time. Reyna reached the edge of the rift. The creature saw her. It turned, if turning was even possible for something that didn't obey the rules of space. It felt her, recognized the armor, and it screamed. Not a sound. A presence. A tidal wave of hatred so deep it froze her breath. But Reyna didn't stop. She lifted her hand. The armor responded, lighting up like a dying star. From her chest, a core emerged, a sphere of red, pulsing with every heartbeat she had left. Initiate final protocol? The armor asked, for the first time seeking permission. She nodded. The core rose into the air, vibrating with unbearable energy. Her legs gave out as it tore from her. Blood ran from her nose. Her vision dimmed. The rift began to collapse inward. The creature screamed again, lashing forward. But it was too late. Reyna, barely conscious, whispered her last command. Close the door. The core detonated. Light swallowed everything, red, blinding, pure. The spires shattered. The rift imploded. The creature howled as it was torn backward, sucked into the void it had tried to escape. The sky sealed shut, screaming as it folded in on itself. Silence returned. Ash fell like snow. When the dust cleared, the battlefield was still. The spires were gone. The sky was whole. The armor lay shattered at the center of a smoldering crater. Reyna was gone. No body. No trace. Just a single piece of armor, her chest plate, still warm to the touch. Kel picked it up days later, standing quietly with the rest of the squad. She wasn't supposed to win, he said. Thurn shook his head. She didn't win. She chose to lose better than anyone else could have. They left the plate on a stone. A marker, a warning, and a promise. No one else would wear it, not ever again. Because war had finally gone quiet. And Reyna Morrow, last of the wielders, had made sure it stayed that way. The sky over Junatar shimmered with an eerie calm, a quiet that didn't belong. Old traders said the silence before the storm always had a taste. Bitter, like metal on your tongue. And today, the whole colony of Suraya 4 felt it. They came in the night, not the kind of night that Earth used to know, but the eternal dusk that hung over this small terraformed world. The Trivan Dominion's warships broke through the atmosphere like knives, silver and soulless. No warning, no negotiation. Just fire. Children didn't scream. They never got the chance. Homes burst open like crushed cans, lights blinking out one by one. The Trivans weren't interested in resources. They didn't need water, didn't need crops. They came for dominance. They came because they could. Earth's colonists, most of them farmers, medics, teachers, had no weapons. The colony was declared neutral under the Galactic Accord. It was supposed to be safe, protected, a place for families, for hope. That hope evaporated in a matter of minutes. Jules Moraine held his daughter's hand as they ran through the burning field of soy leaf stalks. She was 7, small, fragile, asking questions he didn't know how to answer. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" Jules didn't have the heart to tell her. Not yet. Maybe never. He just ran faster, gripping her tighter, whispering, "Keep going, baby, keep going." They weren't soldiers. None of them were. But the massacre didn't care. A Trivan soldier, 8 feet of armored cruelty, drove a spear of light through a fleeing teenager just 10 paces ahead. Jules saw the kid's body crumple, the glow still burning through his chest. He almost threw up. But his daughter kept him moving. By dawn, Soraya 4 was silent again. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where death hangs in the air like smoke. What the Trivans didn't know, or didn't care about, was that every colony had a beacon, a distress signal. And when Jules finally made it to the underground relay station and shoved his bloodied hand on the console, Earth heard it. The signal reached Luna Command within 13 minutes. Admiral Reyna Solis hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she didn't need rest. She needed orders. And when she saw the footage, children burnt alive, elders executed on their knees, outposts reduced to ash, she didn't ask the Council for permission. She simply said, "Mobilize the 7th Fleet. We burn them." Across Earth's orbit, the silence ended. Massive dreadnoughts began powering up, old warships from the solar conflicts, retrofitted for speed and vengeance. Carriers swarmed with exo-armored infantry units, drones calibrated coordinates. Target, Trivan Dominion Forward Fleet. Secondary target, every stronghold they dared to build. Earth had been quiet for decades. Peaceful, even. But Earth never forgot how to fight. And when its children were slaughtered, Earth didn't send diplomats. It sent war. Jules sat in the ruins, holding his daughter against his chest. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The trauma had shut her down. His eyes stared up at the hazy sky where the enemy had vanished. He didn't know if help was coming. But it was. And it wasn't bringing mercy. The hangar bay of the UES Hellstorm buzzed with controlled chaos. Massive engines roared in the background as the final dropships were loaded, their bellies filled with exosuits, weapons, and enough firepower to punch a hole through a moon. The 7th Fleet didn't just prepare for war. They embodied it. Captain Arlen Drax tightened the last magnetic seal on his gauntlet and stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply against the deck. He wasn't a man of ceremony, and yet, when he stood at the head of the drop unit, every soldier fell silent. "Listen up," he said, his voice hard and low. "This ain't a clean op. We're not rescuing hostages. We're not playing by any treaties. They targeted civilians, kids, families. They wiped out a farming colony with no defenses. No survivors as far as we know." He paused, letting the weight of it settle on them. "They wanted to make a point. We're going to make one back. 10 times louder." He scanned the faces in front of him. Men, women, non-binary, even a few synthetics. A few of them were shaking. Others just looked cold. Ready. "Our orders are simple. Drop in. Hit their forward outposts. We don't just cripple them. We erase them. We send one message across every system in this quadrant. You don't touch Earth. You don't touch ours." The roar that followed could have cracked metal. Arlen turned and strode toward his dropship. Behind him, the elite Hellhammer unit followed, fully geared in black-on-black exo-armor, bristling with weapons that weren't even supposed to exist under the current galactic laws. And they didn't care. Halfway through their descent toward Trivan-controlled space, the lights inside the ship dimmed. Brief turbulence shook the cabin. "Brace!" barked the pilot. A few nervous rookies flinched, but Arlen barely moved. He'd been through this dance too many times. But this wasn't just another war zone. This wasn't political. This was personal. The fleet's target was a Trivan outpost on the fringe of Zoral 5, a volcanic moon used for ore processing and military operations. It wasn't heavily populated, but intelligence showed signs of the same ships that had been identified at Soraya 4. If those bastards were down there, Earth's first message would be delivered straight to their throats. The moment the doors split open, the scent of sulfur hit them like a wave, along with the distant rumble of tectonic movement underfoot. Zoral 5 was alive. The lava rivers pulsed through cracked canyons, steam hissed from fissures in the ground, and in the middle of all that, the Trivan compound. High black towers stretched like thorns out of the rock, guarded by plasma cannons and sentinel drones. None of it mattered. Arlen raised his hand. Go. The unit moved like a single organism, exosuits charging forward, railguns locked, drones deployed. The first explosion landed at the southern gate, sending chunks of alien metal flying in every direction. Screams followed. Panicked, high-pitched, unprepared. The Trivans didn't expect them this fast. Didn't matter. Earth didn't give warning anymore. The first Trivan warrior Arlen encountered came at him with a serrated energy blade, taller and bulkier than any human. But the captain didn't flinch. He dodged low, twisted, and drove a compressed core knife into the alien's ribs. The armor cracked with a hiss, and thick black blood spilled as the thing collapsed, gurgling. "You picked the wrong species to mess with," he muttered. Explosions echoed through the compound. The Hellhammer unit was relentless, clearing room by room, showing no mercy. Arlen saw a few Trivans attempt surrender, arms raised, weapons dropped. They were ignored. Soraya 4 burned in every soldier's memory. The images, the bodies, the children. This wasn't a war anymore. This was a reckoning. By the time the sun dipped below Zoral's crust and the last cannon silenced, the Trivan compound had become a crater. Arlen stood on the edge, visor lifted, staring down into the smoke. The comms crackled. "Captain Drax, this is Admiral Solis. Zoral 5 confirmed. You are greenlit for Phase 2. He replied without hesitation. "Understood. Phase 2 commencing. We're not done." Because Earth had only just started answering. On the crystalline world of Vexor Prime, deep within the Trivan Dominion's core systems, the High Command sat in silence. The walls of the War Council chamber shimmered with cold light, every surface reflecting the unease that hung heavy in the air. Lord Commander Xerax, head of the Dominion's military arm, watched the live feed loop over and over. The destruction of Zoral 5's outpost, the complete annihilation of their personnel, and the bodies of Trivan warriors strewn across volcanic stone like discarded metal scraps. "They came like animals," he hissed, his voice low and trembling with something foreign to most Trivans: fear. No diplomacy, no warning, just carnage. Across the table, Minister Dravara, cloaked in shimmering red, responded in a tone that mixed contempt and disbelief. "What did we expect, Xerax? We butchered a colony full of their civilians. Children. They are behaving as they always have. Brutally. Emotionally. And effectively," another voice chimed in from the far end, low, calm, and unsettling. All eyes turned to the shadowed corner where the Overseer of Intelligence stood, unmoving. "We underestimated them," she said. "As always. Earth has spent 2 generations pretending to be soft, peaceful, but they never lost their taste for war. They've just been waiting for a reason." "And we gave it to them," Xerax growled. A map of the quadrant hovered in the center of the chamber. Red Trivan-controlled zones blinked in sharp contrast to the growing blue flickers. Earth's fleet movements. The 7th Fleet had split after Zoral 5, taking separate vectors into Trivan territory, striking supply lines, fuel depots, and communications towers with mechanical precision. They didn't leave survivors. "They're not seeking territory," the overseer continued. "They're not even establishing command centers. This isn't conquest, it's retribution. Every move they make is meant to humiliate us." A long silence followed. For a species like the Trivans, who saw themselves as the apex of galactic civilization, this was unthinkable. They had crushed empires, enslaved entire races, subjugated systems without blinking. And now their pride was bleeding under the boots of angry humans from a blue planet they once considered backward and irrelevant. Xerax slammed his fist against the table. "We need to hit back, hard. Show them who the Dominion is." "No," the overseer said coolly. "That's exactly what they want. Escalation. Right now, the Council of Worlds watches us. If we strike Earth directly, we lose political cover. Our best option is to stall. We offer terms, apologies, anything to buy time." Xerax scoffed. "You want us to beg? I want us to survive." But it was already too late. Far from Vexor Prime, in a hidden relay station orbiting a dying star, Earth's cyber warfare unit had intercepted a high-level Trivan transmission detailing refugee transports leaving military hubs. Civilian ships, vulnerable targets. Admiral Reyna Solis stood silently as the decoded message played before her jaw tight, her eyes cold. "Did they spare our children?" She asked no one in particular. "Did they offer apologies when Soraya 4 burned?" "No, ma'am," came the reply from her XO. "They made an example of us." "Good," she said. "Then we'll return the lesson. Triple it." Orders were sent. The 5th and 9th Battalions were redirected. Civilian hubs or not, if those stations supported the Dominion's war machine, they were now targets. Across the galaxy, systems once distant from Earth's influence, now watched with unease. On neutral planets, news feeds couldn't stop showing the footage. Trivan fleets decimated, fortress worlds in flames, and most chilling of all, the human soldiers. They didn't chant, didn't celebrate. They just killed, efficient, silent, unforgiving. And something deeper began to ripple through the stars. Fear, yes, but also admiration. The weak races, the ones the Trivans had ruled through terror, began to whisper Earth's name with a different tone. Maybe, just maybe, this was the species that could finally break the Dominion's hold. Jules Moraine, still hiding among the ruins of Soraya 4 with his daughter, received the first encoded message a few days later. It was short, blunt. "The 7th Fleet has struck. Zoral 5 is no more. We're coming for the rest." He stared at the message for a long time. Then, for the first time since that horrible night, he let himself smile. Inside the political chambers of New Geneva, Earth's capital on Luna Prime, the mood was anything but united. Holographic projections buzzed around the council floor. Footage of burning outposts, devastated space stations, and reports of rising civilian casualties within Trivan territory. The 7th Fleet wasn't slowing down. If anything, it had become more brutal with each victory. Earth's soldiers weren't just fighting, they were erasing. Senator Lyra Voss stood at the center of the storm, her voice sharp, echoing through the rotunda. "We are becoming the very thing we swore to resist. This isn't war, it's annihilation." Across from her, Defense Secretary Morgan Hale leaned forward, cold-eyed and unapologetic. "We didn't start this, Senator. They did. They butchered our children. This isn't about diplomacy anymore. It's about never letting that happen again." "You're killing civilians," Lyra shot back. "You're bombing refugee arcs. The Council of Worlds is watching. We're being labeled a rogue species." Morgan didn't flinch. "Good. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when you touch Earth." The chamber descended into a shouting match, half calling for restraint, half demanding escalation. Outside the political storm, however, the reality was clearer. Earth's people, the ordinary ones, the workers and builders and healers, they were angry. They remembered Suraya 4, and most of them didn't care who got burned as long as someone paid for it. On the ground, that same fury simmered beneath every soldier's armor. Captain Arlen Drax crouched behind the smoldering wreck of a Trivan hover tank, blood drying across his visor. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of scorched metal. A sharp pain pulsed in his side. He'd taken shrapnel during the breach of Varkos 3, the Dominion's primary munitions depot. Didn't matter. They'd taken it. His squad was down to half strength, but the depot was nothing more than rubble now. "Medic," he growled into the comm. Corporal Santi slid beside him, already pulling out a cauterizer. "Sir, you need evac." "We hold position," Arlen grunted. "We wait for the 9th. "But they're not due for—" "They'll come," he interrupted. "We finish this. No half measures." As Santi treated the wound, a faint noise buzzed through the comm. A child's voice. Is anyone there?" Arlen froze. The voice repeated. "We're in the tunnels. My mom is hurt. Please." Santi looked at him, uncertain. "We thought they evacuated this place," she whispered. "They didn't," Arlen muttered. "Or they lied." He activated his helmet mic. "Identify yourself. Who are you?" I'm Surreal. My mom worked the machines. They shot her. She's bleeding." The voice was young. Too young. For a long second, Arlen didn't speak. The rage that had driven him for weeks twisted in his gut, and suddenly it wasn't so clean anymore. His orders had been clear. No survivors, no mercy. But this wasn't a soldier calling. This was a child. "I'm sending help," he said finally, quiet and bitter. Santi blinked. "Sir?" "We're not the Trivans," Arlen muttered. "Not yet." He tapped his comm. "Mark the signal. Pull a field team. Bring them out. Alive." And just like that, a ripple started. Small, quiet, but it mattered. Because behind the armor, beneath the fury, there were still choices. Back on Suraya 4, Jules Moraine knelt in the shattered temple where his wife had died. He placed a small memory stone beneath the altar, tears streaking through the ash on his face. His daughter sat beside him, silent. Then a low hum filled the air. A massive ship, Earth's Grace, a mobile hospital vessel, descended into the colony's remains, its insignia glowing blue in the fading light. They were finally coming home, not just to avenge, but maybe to rebuild. Far across the stars, the Trivan overseer watched another report roll in. Human units sparing children, evacuating injured, rebuilding what they'd destroyed. "Emotion," she whispered, "is their curse." She paused. "Or their greatest weapon." The Trivan High Council convened in a subterranean chamber buried beneath the core fortress of Vexor Prime, far from the floating glass towers the public believed held power. The real decisions, the ones drenched in blood and desperation, were always made in the dark. Lord Commander Xerax stood at the center, trembling not from fear, but rage. "They hesitated," he spat, slamming his clawed hand against the obsidian console. "They spared civilians. They're sending in relief ships now, hospital vessels. They're rebuilding our ruins." Minister Dravara, pale and gaunt, said nothing for a moment. Then, with a slow blink, she replied, "And yet, every one of our garrisons in Sector 12 has fallen. Our minds are silent. Our fleets are scattered. Call their mercy what you want, Commander, but don't mistake it for weakness." "The galaxy is watching us bow to humans," Xerax growled. "This was supposed to be a lesson for the lesser species, and now they chant Earth's name in back alleys like it's a goddamn salvation." The overseer entered silently, her robes fluttering behind her like shadows given form. Her voice carried with it a chill that sucked the heat from the room. The humans didn't come to take land. They came to break us. And slowly, they are. She pulled up a holomap, revealing red blinking alerts across key sectors. Entire outposts marked as lost, not just taken, obliterated. Even their own soldiers were starting to defect or desert, questioning orders. Word of Earth's retaliation had begun to spread among Dominion civilians, and for the first time in centuries, fear turned inward. "There's a rumor," she said coldly, "that Earth has developed something, a weapon, a planet cracker. A final strike." Xerax scoffed. "Propaganda." "No," she replied. "Hope." He looked at her, confused. "They're letting the galaxy believe they're capable of extinction-level response, and they're not denying it. That's more powerful than any real weapon." Meanwhile, Earth's fleets were tightening their noose. Admiral Solis stood before a row of holo terminals as reports flooded in. Another Trivan garrison surrendered without a fight. Several Dominion-occupied moons now raised neutral flags. The dominoes were falling fast. But she didn't look pleased. Because behind her stood Ambassador Cade Miles, Earth's liaison to the Council of Worlds, and one of the last voices calling for diplomacy. "This has gone too far," he said quietly. Solis didn't turn. Too far was Soraya 4. "We've destabilized half the quadrant. Millions are fleeing. There are whispers of galactic sanctions." She finally looked at him, eyes cold as steel. "Let them whisper. You're not just fighting Trivans anymore. You're rewriting Earth's identity, from survivor to conqueror." Solis stepped closer, low and deliberate. "Maybe it's time the galaxy feared us a little." Back in the field, Captain Arlen Drax sat in silence beside the young Trivan girl, Cyril. She sat cross-legged, arms wrapped around herself, watching the medics tend to her mother. Her skin shimmered faintly under the field light, the scaled texture of her species catching the glow in strange patterns. "You're not like the others," she said quietly. "I'm not sure that's a good thing," Arlen replied. He hadn't been sleeping. Every face he saw in the smoke, every building he torched. He kept wondering if he'd have been spared if the sides were flipped. Probably not. She tilted her head. "You look sad when you win." That hit harder than any wound. Arlen rose slowly. "War isn't about winning. It's about surviving what comes after." He didn't know why he'd saved her. Maybe guilt, maybe something more dangerous, remorse. But what scared him most was that part of him hadn't wanted to. He'd wanted to follow orders, to burn through every living thing in a Dominion uniform, child or not. He could feel himself changing, and he wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. Meanwhile, back on Soraya 4, Jules Moraine helped a team of engineers lift debris from what used to be a water purification center. He moved like a man with purpose now, not just grief. More ships were landing every day. Earth was rebuilding the colony, but this time there were automated defense systems, satellite shields, and armed guards. Never again. His daughter stood nearby, holding a small Earth flag. She waved it at the newcomers. A tiny sign of resilience. Jules watched her, his chest tight with both pride and dread. They were alive. They were surviving. But at what cost? The fires of war crept closer to Vexor Prime. For all its fortified walls and deep planetary shields, the Trivan capital now pulsed with fear. Every day brought new updates, Earth's fleet drawing nearer, systems going dark, allies defecting or fleeing. Even the inner sanctums whispered of collapse. In the hidden corridors beneath the great citadel, Lord Commander Xerax met with a figure most of the Dominion pretended didn't exist. Coral of the Shadow Accord, an exile, a traitor once stripped of rank, now summoned in desperation. "You said you had a solution," Xerax said, his voice heavy with shame. Coral smirked, his body shrouded in sleek black armor that didn't belong to any Trivan military division. "I said I had a weapon." He raised a small device, its core glowing a pulsing violet. "The Last Whisper," he said, "a bio-neurodisruptor designed to wipe a planet clean. No cities burned, no structures harmed, just the minds. Gone. In a day." Xerax's nostrils flared. "You'd use this on Earth?" "No," Coral answered. "I'd use it on Luna Prime, their capital. Take their voice away, make them too broken to speak." Xerax hesitated. Even he could feel how wrong it was. But the Dominion was bleeding. They were losing not just a war, but face, dignity, power, everything they'd built for millennia. "We deploy it only if Earth enters our orbit," he said finally, voice dry. "Only then." Coral smiled. "Then prepare to press the button." Meanwhile, Admiral Solus stood aboard the command bridge of the UES Reckoner, Earth's newest dreadnought, a beast of war never meant to leave dry dock. But now it spearheaded the assault group aimed directly at Vexor Prime. Solus stared at the star map. One system away. That's all that was left. One jump. "Still no response from the Dominion?" she asked. "Only static and scattered surrender transmissions from surrounding systems," replied her comms officer. She nodded once, tight. "Send the final notice. Vexor has 24 hours to surrender." "And if they don't?" Solus's jaw clenched. "We finish what they started." But not everyone on board agreed. Captain Arlen Drax, now promoted for field valor, paced the viewing deck of the Reckoner, troubled. Surreal and her mother had been relocated to a neutral world under Earth's protection, thanks to him. But it hadn't brought peace. He kept thinking of that girl's voice in the tunnels, of his hesitation. He'd led countless assaults, lost too many friends, burned down outposts without flinching. But now, so close to the end, he wondered, what would it change? Vexor Prime and Ashes wouldn't bring Soraya IV back, wouldn't unburn the children. Was this justice or vengeance dressing up as duty? That night, he stood outside Admiral Solus's office, requested entry. "Captain," she said, surprised, "you're not on this deck's rotation. I need to speak about the final assault." She motioned him in, expression unreadable. "I think we need to give them a way out," he said. Solus frowned. "We've given them enough. If we destroy them now, we win, but we lose everything else. The Council of Worlds will shut us out. The galaxy will fear us, not respect us. This doesn't end with Vexor Prime. It ends with what we become after." "You're suggesting mercy?" Solus asked, her voice heavy with judgment. "I'm suggesting strategy," he replied. "We beat them. Everyone knows it. Let them surrender. Let their pride die while their people live. We don't have to turn Earth into the thing they always claimed we were." She leaned back, thinking. It was true. Every advisor had warned her. Even Morgan Hale, the coldest man on her staff, had said privately, "The last step is the one history remembers most." Outside the ship, the stars stretched in perfect silence. In the shadows of Vexor Prime, Coral prepared the last whisper for deployment. Inside the Reckoner, Earth prepared for its final offensive. And in the middle, a decision hovered, one that could define the fate of two civilizations, mercy or annihilation. And the clock was ticking. The final 24 hours bled away like smoke from a dying fire. Admiral Solus stood in full uniform before the Reckoner's War Council. Generals, fleet commanders, data analysts, every high-ranking officer in the fleet was present. A large holographic timer hovered above the center table. 000327 and ticking. No reply from Vexor Prime. No surrender. She hadn't slept in 2 days. "We proceed on schedule," Solus announced. Her voice was steel, but the silence that followed said everything. Even the war-hardened looked tired. Hollow. Captain Drax stood at the far end of the chamber, arms crossed, unreadable. He had said his piece. She hadn't shot him down, but she hadn't agreed either. "We launched the first wave of disruptor pulses at 0300 Galactic time," Solus continued. "Target, outer defense rings. Once down, we move to primary atmospheric strikes. No boots on ground, surgical, swift, final." As the officers began to disperse, she looked at Drax. "Walk with me." They stepped into the observation corridor overlooking the vast, dark stretch of stars. Vexor Prime glittered faintly in the distance, a cold, distant orb soon to become history. "You still believe they'll surrender?" she asked him quietly. "I believe they're waiting to die with pride because we haven't offered them another ending." Solus didn't answer for a moment. Then she asked, almost softly, "What if we're wrong, Arlen? What if Mercy gives them the breath they need to rebuild, to come back twice as cruel in a decade?" "Then we deal with them again. But we don't become monsters today," he replied. "Today we show the galaxy that even after everything, we still knew where the line was." Just then, a sharp beep echoed in the corridor. The comm unit flickered. "Admiral," said a technician, "we've got an incoming signal. Dominion channel, encrypted." Solus whipped around. "Source?" "Vexor Prime, but it's not military." The signal cracked open. A blurred, low-resolution feed came to life. A Trivan female dressed in civilian garb appeared on screen, her eyes wide, her voice shaky. "To Earth Command, this is Minister Varala. I was once part of the Civilian Council. I beg you to listen. They're going to kill us. Not you, us." Solus tensed. "Clarify." "They've activated a contingency, a failsafe. It's called the Last Whisper, a device that doesn't destroy buildings. It erases consciousness, mind waves, every living thought. They'll unleash it on your fleets or their own people before surrender. They think it's better to vanish than bow." Solus's blood ran cold. "Coordinates?" she asked. Varala hesitated. "The southern pole of the planet, below their old prison complex. That's where it's housed." The transmission cut out suddenly. Signal severed. Drax stepped forward. "She's telling the truth." Solus stared out at the stars, the weight of it all crashing into her. A suicide device, a full-scale mind kill. They wouldn't just die, they'd take everyone with them. Solus turned sharply. "Prep a ground team, I'm going in." Drax blinked. "You?" "This is bigger than war. If this is real, we stop it ourselves. I need someone who's been inside their heads. That's you, Captain." He didn't hesitate. "Gear me up." As preparations began, Solus gave the order. "Hold the strike." New objective. Neutralize the Whisper. And just like that, Earth's most destructive fleet turned from annihilation to infiltration. Hours later, a single black stealth pod breached Vexor Prime's outer atmosphere, slipping beneath the surface like a shadow. Inside, Solus, Drax, and a 5-person unit prepared to descend into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. They landed inside the ruins of what once was a prison, the kind used for political enemies, war resistors, dissidents. The air stank of old blood and something worse. Fear soaked into the walls. Drax took point, rifle drawn. "Tracking heat signatures. Movement. We're not alone." They moved fast, silent, through winding tunnels until they reached it. A circular chamber, humming with violet light. In its center sat the device. The Last Whisper. Standing before it was Corell. "I wondered if you'd come yourselves," he said, smiling coldly. "How poetic." "You're outnumbered," Solus warned. "No," he replied, finger hovering over a biopad. "I already won. The moment you chose to care. Drax raised his rifle. Don't. Why not? Coral said. You wipe us out, you're monsters. You spare us, you're fools. I win either way. But then the unexpected happened. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber as a plasma bolt slammed into Coral's shoulder from behind. The shooter, Minister Varala. No more monsters, she said. Coral collapsed, twitching. His hand never reached the pad. The whisper powered down. Quiet fell. Solus looked at her. Why? Because we want to live, Varala said, even if it means surrender. And with that, the war truly changed. The war didn't end with fireworks. There was no grand ceremony, no triumphant anthem played across the stars. It ended in a whisper. Not the kind Corel intended, but the kind that follows a storm so loud it leaves everyone stunned in the silence. The whisper device was dismantled, sealed in a containment field, and shipped to Earth under full security escort. Admiral Solus personally escorted it back. She said nothing the entire way. By the time they reached Luna Prime, the news had already spread. Vexor Prime had fallen, not by fire, not by orbital bombardment, but by surrender. Earth had offered a second chance. The galaxy didn't know what to do with that. For generations, Earth had been seen as a former backwater, smart, dangerous, but always restrained. No longer. Now, their name echoed in hushed tones, not just as a warning, but as a question. What is Earth becoming? Back in New Geneva, the council chamber stood in total silence as Admiral Solus addressed them for the final time in her uniform. They had a choice, death or humility. They chose to live. We let them. Some, Senator Voss said slowly, are calling it weakness. That we should have finished them. Solus didn't flinch. Let them talk. The galaxy saw something no empire has dared to show in centuries. Mercy with power. That terrifies them. And she was right. In the weeks that followed, smaller empires began reaching out to Earth with guarded diplomacy, not because they wanted friendship, but because they now knew Earth could destroy them and chose not to. Power, they realized, wasn't just about pulling the trigger. It was about being the one holding the gun, steady and silent, while everyone else shook. The Trivan Dominion officially signed the Treaty of Suraya, named for the colony that had started everything. It stripped them of half their controlled systems, disbanded their slave fleets, and put every warlord under intergalactic tribunal. But they were alive. Their cities remained standing. Their children still played in the streets. And they would remember that Earth, the species they called lesser, had spared them when they would never have done the same. Arlen Drax returned to Earth a different man. He visited Suraya IV, now under slow reconstruction. The fields were green again. New crops sprouting from soil soaked in tragedy. He found Jules Moraine there, older, tired, but with eyes that had found some form of peace. I heard what you did, Jules said, handing him a flask. Saving that girl, standing down. I don't know if it was the right choice, Arlen admitted. Jules just smiled. It was human. That's enough. Nearby, Jules' daughter played in the dirt. A little older now, she looked up, noticed Arlen, and waved. For the first time in years, he waved back. Admiral Solus retired not long after. She refused all awards, medals, or monuments. The only thing we should honor, she said, is restraint. Her final act was authorizing the construction of a monument, not to Earth's victory, but to Suraya IV. It stood tall in the capital square of Luna Prime, made from melted fragments of the destroyed colony and Vexor's scorched weapons. No names engraved, just a single sentence in every galactic language. We were hurt. We struck back, but we remembered who we were. The galaxy never forgot what Earth did, and Earth never forgot why it had to.